Well, good morning, good evening, as we say in the global world, and welcome, my friend. How are you?
Very well. Namaskar. And I'm very happy to be with you on your program on Leaders Who Care.
I'm super excited. We met years ago, actually in Toronto, if I recall, and at a Verde Exchange conference, and just became friends. And then I got to see you again I don't know, a year ago, maybe a year and a bit ago in Delhi. That was great, and so I'm really appreciative of you being on this. And I know there'll be some few good tidbits, I'm sure, that we'll be able to share with the audience. And in that respect, then do me the pleasure of just introducing yourself and telling a little bit about you. I know how you can talk and how I can talk. Just tell a little bit about you.
Sure. No, it's Mark. It's been great. It's been a decade that we've known each other, and we just bumped into each other at the Verde conference, which I was invited by the government of Canada to address. And we just clicked each other, and I think it was a great click. And when I got your connect again, about a year and a half back, it was great memories coming back to me of the time we were able to communicate, meet, spend while we were there for that conference. So I have great memories from Canada and your being there. And it was such a pleasure last year when we caught up in February 2019, welcoming you here in India for the conference you were hosting for the Fifth Element. And that gave me an exposure to meet you and your colleagues on various fronts. I also got that exposure of understanding the kind of work which you're doing in terms of building human resource. Now, you asked me about me. In any case, you know all about me, per se, because 10 years you've known me fairly in and out.
But my audience doesn't know you, so you have to tell a little bit about you.
I am Professor of Finance and Dean at the Indian Institute of Finance. It is a 33-year-old research-based education institution. I also edit a journal, a technical refereed scientific journal called Finance India as the executive editor. It's a 400-page publication. Each issue is about 400 pages. And it is ranked third best worldwide by various international agencies in a very high impact factor. For the my journey in terms of television and all, I would say as an expert, being interviewed, started way back in 1994-95. I was interviewed by BBC World Hindi, and then it's never stopped. So fortunately, I'm happy, and I can say that my views are considered by the government in India and even international agencies. And I'm interviewed almost every other day on some television network or newspaper or news agency worldwide. I have, to my credit, I would say, if I have another second or so, various decisions which have been taken by international agencies. Like I would say the KYC norms which you observe in banks was something which was proposed by me and my co-author way back in 2003 and 4, which was taken up by the World Bank and the IMF, and they introduced the KYC norms in accordance with what we had suggested at that time. Then the formulation of the European Constitution, I was the first one way back in 1999, 2000 and 2001, where I addressed over 20 forums in Europe, in US, European Parliament Forum, European Union forums, where I talked about this concept of Europe, a new Europe, a constitution of Europe, and the Fiscal Policy Board. And I'm happy to say that the first draft of European Constitution was submitted in 2004, and the Fiscal Policy Board is already in place, which was formalized in 2017, but informally it was existing from 2001 to onwards, after my suggestion, which went to the European. So like this, I have had a couple of decisions, and one major decision again recently which took place was by our Prime Minister Modi, where I have been talking about post office banking, where you are uplifting the post offices to become a bank, and they had been doing some basic work, but then extending it to a great extent. And I'm happy that our Prime Minister about 2 years back has actually introduced the post office banking as a medium to go forward. So I'm happy that not only that my research work is only adding to journals and academic volumes, but is actually bringing policy change and smiles at the lives of people across the country and some decisions even internationally.
Yeah, it's a great point, because there's a lot of smart people out there that do care, but how do you get it into real life rather than just in a journal, as you said? So I've always Yeah, I've always appreciated that when we had our amazingly long conversations after knowing each other for 6 minutes in Toronto, and it was pretty impressive. Now I guess you kind of grew up in a educational family, right? So to speak. And I'd like to know, a little bit about quote unquote, what's your why, and more importantly, like, why do you do what you do?
I'm very thankful to you that you asked me, because very few people ask me about what I do and what I don't do, but what makes me do so. As a young child, when I grew up in school, I always read about first initially fighter planes and an army, and I was charmed to be joining the Indian Air Force or the Indian Army. But then as I grew further in my upper middle school, as we say, I started reading about scientists, about Newton, about Einstein, about Galileo, and so on and so forth. And I was impressed by their lifestyle and their contributions in terms of research, into the way we led and read. And it impressed me so much that I wanted to be a scientist. And then when I completed my schooling, I got admissions in various engineering colleges in medical colleges in other parts of the country. But I wanted to stay back in Delhi, and then I wanted to do research. And my father and mother, who are both professors in economics, my mother is a professor of economics, and my father is a professor of finance, which is a part of commerce, they said that we also in social science do research. It is not that only life sciences have scientists and researchers, but we also as people in social sciences do research. And fortunately, my father had some friends who were Nobel laureates, and some of them visited India, and then other friends who were deans and of various universities across who were visiting quite often at the institute and other places. So I got to have an interaction with them, and I got influenced. And I said, why not? I want to be a researcher. I want to contribute to the literature. And if I get this chance to do it, so that's what I want to do. And then fortunately I did that, but then they wanted me, and I also wanted to get an exposure from overseas studies. So after finishing my master's here in India and my graduation in master's, I went forth to do my master's in London School of Economics in London.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to have an exposure of the US. And so I went and met almost about 4 or 5 Nobel laureates, Robert Merton, a couple of others who were friends of my father. And they said, look, you can do a PhD program, but then it takes about 5 to 6 years or maybe even 10 years in the United States to actually go about doing a PhD program. And then they asked me, they talked to me about what was my life objective, why do I want to do it? And then they said that why don't you do this master's program, either in public administration or in business administration, and that will add value to your own goals or what you're looking at and what you want to do in terms of public policy making and so on and so forth. And hence I joined Columbia University's master's program, and I pursued that. And then this was a senior executive program called the PEPM program at CIPA, which was from Columbia Business School, School of International Planning and Affairs, and the Department of Economics. And that made me churn, because I, fortunately, in London School of Economics, attended large number of conferences of politicians from all over the world. Then at the business school and the Columbia University, I attended people from different walks of life, some politicians, most business leaders, practitioners, lawyers, and so on and so forth. And that influenced my thinking and doing. And then I got this opportunity to work with the World Bank in Washington, D.C., which I worked, and then I finished my term, and then I wanted to come back because I wanted to do research. I was able to do research at the World Bank also. I think it would have been a different sphere. But then I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to be back home, contribute to my motherland. And that called me back, although my parents said, stay back for some time, get some more exposure. But I said I was done with exposure. I wanted to start coming, doing my research, and serving my motherland. And that's what got me into what I am doing today. I feel happy. In terms of money, someone asked me the other day at a television interview about my lifestyle also, like you are doing, but it's about leadership there. They wanted to know about my life story. And that's where they said, how much do you earn? And that was interesting. I never thought about it. And, then I said, I earn even less than what I was earning when I was at the World Bank way back in 2001, 2002, even today. And, so if you want to calibrate growth in terms of the money value, then effectively I am very much down. But when I look at my whole life, in this last 20 years, I've addressed 6, 7 parliaments. I addressed the Uzbekistan parliament, I addressed the Swedish parliament, the Finnish parliament, the European parliament, I addressed the Danish parliament. I have addressed over 30 forums of various governments. Now, this was being present here, coming from here. I addressed the Finnish parliament twice. Now, I could make that change as a researcher sitting here. I could voice my thing, but as a World Bank officer, I could do a tremendous amount of work, tremendous amount of contribution, but I could not voice my own work because there are restrictions, there are frameworks. It's a very bureaucratic structure. So I loved my job there, but then I thought this was more welcoming for me. And fortunately, I would say, in terms of reputation, in terms of the love I get from my students, the other day at the course which I program, I host the essence of life and growth. I interviewed one of my students who's a Bharatanatyam dancer, and she's successful in the US working with eBay. But then, the way she respected me, she talked to me, and it felt enlightened. I feel happy when I see my students grow. It's like my own children, like my own plants growing up. And there are thousands of them now doing such good works. And that gives me immense pleasure. And I think this is where, the real pleasure comes in, as against what money can actually give you at the end of the day. So, what I do for living in terms of giving my knowledge, sharing my knowledge, whether it's in terms of interviews like this on television or in newspapers, or even talking to young minds, talking to elder people. And if they say that what I have spoken makes a difference in their lives, if I have been able to accomplish some good thing, that's what I think is what I do.
It's a great look on life. I've known some professional sports coaches that have said their biggest legacy is seeing how many of their assistant coaches or other assistants have become head coaches of other teams, and teachers who are widely underappreciated, although now getting more appreciated because of homeschooling. The impact they have for years and years that sometimes they don't even see. And I love the way you phrased it about like your little plants growing. It's a tremendous contribution to everything. And it kind of leads to, my next point about it's taken almost decades for corporate leaders to finally realize that the brand of the corporation, the business is majorly impacted by being aligned with social impact. And that it's also great for attracting talent, because talent now only wants to go where leaders do care about them and whatnot. But it's really good for business. And as you said, you've been involved in finance, economics, strategies, the whole bit. If I could paraphrase what you just said, it sounds like what differentiates you as one of the leaders who care is growing those plants into other contributors to impact.
True. No, it is. And, when I see smiles, like I see smile on your face, the way when you connected back with me, brought back smile on my face that, someone remembered me over a decade. And although we have been in touch in between, but then we never communicated so much. Just before you're coming to India, we communicated, we connected again. And that, brought that smile on my face, that feeling that, you are being respected, that you are being cared for, you are doing something. So similar is when I see smiles, when I see prosperity in the lives of my students. And I think that's what makes me very happy. As far as institutions, yes, I think you rightly pointed out about the brand, the structure, the way brands are created. But I feel personally, what I am today is because of the institution called Indian Institute of Finance and Finance India. I have my contributions to whatever I could take it to, but then more comes from there on, because the structure, like when I was at the World Bank, I got that uplift. When I'm at the Indian Institute of Finance, I get that uplift. It's not that people are coming to me directly. It's coming through that institution. It's that reputation, the brand they have been able to develop in the last 33 years that actually enriched my life. The students who are coming there, who want to seek knowledge, they learned from me because of that institutional playground. So it's that land which is fertile, which has been given to me by this framework. And I am fortunate that I feel happy at the end of the day when I sleep, that I am able to make that difference in the lives of people, trying to do whatever little I can do in their lives.
Well, it's interesting. My grandfather always used to say, we used to go for walks when I was a kid, and he'd smile and say hello to everybody. And I said to him, we called him Zeta. I said, Zeta, you know all these people? He said, no, I don't know most of them, but when I smile at them, they smile back. I feel good. They feel good. It's great. Yeah. But another thing, to segue into another part here, I think most grandparents probably have said this. They would say, as long as we have our health, that's the most important thing. And with all the speed of technology, with COVID upon us right now, impacting social and economic, how do you see things developing. How do you see the future of how work's going to be, how doing business is going to evolve over the next short to long term?
So I'll take another 2-3 minutes, but I'll divide this into two components, And the first is that, if you would have seen, I've been holding this series of webinars on essence of life and job.
Mm-hmm.
And I've interviewed about 58 people from across the globe, Hollywood actresses, lawyers, people from professor academics, people, doctors, different spheres altogether from different parts of the world, from Japan, Turkey, different countries, US, UK, everywhere. And, one thing which came out unique to my satisfaction, in fact, which I thought, but then it's more like a research which I am able to understand, is that people at the end of the day are very happy. They have learned and they have introspected in themselves. They've got this time because they were on a run. It was become so stressful. They have stopped. They're looking into themselves. And that happiness is growing over time, And that is something which is very critical, in my opinion, when we look at healthy life. Because at the end of the day, if you're not happy, if you're not satisfied with what you do,
Right.
if you're not able to introspect and see, have you actually done something and do you need to do what more and what not more, then you are just running like a mad race, where for what is not clear. And I think that is something which came out as a very clear message in some of these frameworks. It has built upon me. I have learned about it. And I think that's very important. The other component is that, it gives you mental satisfaction. These periods, these difficult periods, are seen difficultly. But we have been at the Indian Institute of Finance researching for the last 4 months on trying to understand, because I'm a professor of economics and finance, I look at it from a non-humanitarian perspective, from an economic perspective, not purely a humanitarian perspective. And then we try to study almost large number of pandemics, over 24 pandemics which have happened in the last 3,000 years. Then we studied the kind of war situations which have happened, the tsunami situations or earthquakes or fire burns which have taken place around the world. US suffers every year because of the fire which takes place in big, rich forests, which destroys the wood. Australia had that happen. We had the tsunami in 2004. We have had SARS, we have had pandemics, we have had AIDS, which is still servicing, and so on and so forth. You can keep naming them. World wars, Syria is suffering from a war, Afghanistan has suffered for a war. So there is these things going on, and we try to study them. And when we study them, we found very interesting outcomes. And what the outcomes were, Mark, that within a span of about 6 months to about a year, and in fact, it starts from 6 months from the period it ends, things start rebounding back very fast economically. And the reason is that things get destroyed, things get delayed. And as a result, there is a need which is there, which creates things. Like in tsunami, which happened in 2004, Indonesia was majorly destroyed completely. And then for almost a decade from then, Indonesia has never surfaced any slowdown. Why? Because they had to develop. The industry which was sleeping, had no work, had suddenly got work. Similarly, 2000, 2007, 2008 crisis in the US, the meltdown took place. Whole reorientation took place, and then they created. So when we look at various pandemic scenarios, like even now, the healthcare is working extensively. Large number of institutions and organizations which were into perfume making, other chemical industries have started making sanitizers, masks, and so on and so forth. Individual institutions are making masks, trying to grow up. And we will certainly see when things open up, because people have delayed their consumption for such a long time, for almost 2 months now, they will suddenly go about spending, because we say in statistics, a mean reversion process. A mean reversion means one has a tendency to go down to the same level. If I give you a pebble and you throw in water, there are ripples created. But those ripples settle down. They come to their normalcy. What is the new normalcy going to be there would be different. But the normalcy is that the fact that you will have to go about, I have not been able to get a haircut for the last 2 months, now 2.5 months. So most of us will rush to a barber. So there will be an extensive demand of a barber services. Then there will be extensive demand of food services, entertainment. Now the environment has become so clean. People have not been coming to a city like Delhi for decades now because it was so polluted from smaller cities in India. Now they would love to come to Delhi, see the historical places in Delhi, love to travel because things are very clean. So, the tourism will go up, entertainment industry will see a new phase. Education, the other day the Minister of Finance announced that they are launching about 12 channels, one for every class. And plus they announced the fact for disabled as well, they're launching television channels, which will go digital as well as, now imagine the bridge between urban and rural. Rural India, people could not afford to get that education. Now they will get a uniform base. The divide between urban and rural will disappear. Large number of people have gone from big cities like Delhi to their rural hometowns, migrant workers who might have been reading in newspapers. Now there is a chaos. But what will happen? Now someone who has been eating McDonald's burgers or eating Pizza Hut's pizzas, he cannot change his habit to eating rotis and chapatis every day. He would need that. So McDonald's will now start setting up shops in smaller towns, in rural areas, who have gone to industries coming from agriculture backgrounds, who their forefathers were doing agriculture. They can't do agriculture now because maybe for a decade or 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, they have not done agriculture. So they would like to set up industries or agriculture-based products. So there will be a growth. That divide between urban and rural will disappear. So there will be a new growth movement. I say it is a process of evolution. And I say this evolution is something which is teaching mankind or what is being together, connecting with each other, feeling each other, understanding and appreciating the feelings of people in the families. People were living together decades after decades, but they did not know each other. They were living like strangers.
Yeah.
That was the way of life. They did not know how to share a smile like the way I share with you. They had forgotten that what is sharing a smile like, or having a cup of tea in the evening. I think that is something which will grow up. So I don't see any problem. The economies will rebound back. The World War II happened. US created framework for Europe to be redeveloped. The whole Europe got developed. It took about 10, 15 years. But there was a major momentum, both in the US economy, in European economy, and all those economies which were destroyed. Within a span of 3 to 6 months, there was a huge burst which came in. And so I, as an economic and a finance professor, I feel that there is nothing to worry. The jobs will reorient. The structure of framework will reorient. We are looking new ways, communicating, connecting with people, doing work, doing business. There will be a whole new economic framework which will come in place. And that is going to yield more productive, more efficient results, which can save the environment. So we don't need to keep crying about environment, as we have been doing for the last 30 years, and with no results. And we will see peacocks, birds chirping as we see in India today. And I believe that's there in, the other day I read in Venice, dolphins have come back into canals, which have not been seen for almost like 3 or 4 decades.
I know.
Now, that's,
I think the birds, we hear the birds out here talking and they're saying, I don't know what happened, but this is pretty cool.
I actually agree. We have tigers come on the streets, in big streets, main streets here. It's like reclaiming their territories, but we should not fear them. They are part of this ecosystem. Right. They are like brothers and sisters for us. They have equal right. I remember we had the Deputy Prime Minister of Poland who was addressing at the Institute. I'll take a second more if you don't mind. Who was addressing at the Institute way back in 94, 95. And I was taking him around to show him a little bit of Delhi. And then he said, Aman, I see these buffaloes, these cows roaming around in the streets. Don't you have any rules, regulations? Don't you have any problems with it? I said, you see, they are as good a citizen of this country as I am. I may have a passport. I may have an Aadhaar card or a social security number framework or a PAN card or an income tax card. They may not, but they are equally born because they have equal rights being born on this piece of land. If I can move freely, so can they. And I think that is something to live in that ecosystem where we respect each other's space, where we are welcoming ecosystems to grow and harbor. I think it's important. It was the call of the day. Corona, as one of my speakers who's a doctor said, is like a guru corona. He has made us understand something which we have missed, looked us into spirituality and started connecting us back into our lives, putting us on the train tracks. We had lost track of our life. We are back on track. And I think we will be a better society, whether it is in the US or in India or in Germany or Turkey or Venezuela, or you talk of a smallest country like Cambodia or Vietnam. I think we are on the right path to prosperity and rethinking of our lives to take us forward, going ahead.
I wish you had some passion, man. I wish you brought some passion to the table. Come on. No, that's spectacular. And you actually You actually answered a last question as well, which is I think we're going to, and the leaders who care are going to start realizing that you got to address our, not only our financial well-being, but our physical well-being and our mental well-being. And so I really appreciate you bringing not only your knowledge, but your caring, passionate way of being. And I thank you for being a really good friend. And we hope to see you again super soon.
Certainly. No, I love to see you again soon. I've been a student. I love being a student. It's something, a process of learning. And, I learn so much from you. The smiles you bring, the fascination you
You
put,
tell that
the
to all
zeal.
the guys.
So I could have that zeal as well in terms of inducing in that environment. But I still have to learn this trick from you, which I always appreciate from day one when we met in Canada, in Toronto.
What's that?
And that is, this connect of this beautiful smile you have, the energy you bring forth, and the positivity you bring forth to it. I become very analytical being an economics person, but then you have that human touch to it. Your smile, your communication has it. And that's something which wins the hearts of others. And I think since then, I have been won by you in terms of the hearts. And I think that's where I feel that importance of that smile, which you keep talking about, the connect which you have is very critical in my life in trying to understand. So I learn from you a lot from that perspective.
Well, and the feeling is mutual, and that's why we keep connected. So thanks so much for bringing all you bring, and for bringing it here. My pleasure. We will talk to you again real soon.
Thank you. Jai Hind.